Good morning, warriors on a mission. Good morning. Believe me, I've been rushing and running. It's hard to believe that even in the confines of your home, that you find yourself running around trying to get ready on time. But anyway, God has given us a word on today. I'm thankful for God giving a word, and I'm actually very thankful for what He pointed out to me in this word. And so, as you're going about, and I know you and I, we're in one body. And usually what one part of the body is experiencing is not for so long before the other portion begins to experience the same things. So I know I've never been in the island by myself when it comes to experiencing things with God. And I got to say that because God allows us to go through what we go through to strengthen us. It's never been a portion of where He allow you to go through it just to break you or to, make you give up. That's not God. That's not our Father. But what He does do, He allows us to go through things to strengthen us, to help us mature, to show us things that we're going to need for the next battle. He'll show us things that will allow us to be able to help somebody else. That's our Father. So when I go through things or when God begins to show me things, I'm very thankful, and I do my best to try to hold on to the message because I know God gave it to me for a reason. And, whether it's on a Wednesday or Friday's experience or whatever I may go through, I know He's allowing me to go through for a reason. So I do my best to get whatever message God has in that situation for me. So prayerfully that you've been able to pretty much do the same as you go through your week. You're able to just see, God, what was you saying in this message? What was you saying to me in this situation? Father, what is it that you're showing me in this situation? And prayerfully, that's what you've been doing. If you haven't, begin to look back at some of the things God has brought you through or some of the situations that you are in so that you can ask God to reveal to you what it is that He's showing you. So on this morning, I want you to follow with me to 1 Samuel, the 23rd chapter. And we're going to be looking at about 15 verses today. I'm not going to discuss them line by line if it's God's will. But there's a deep message in this that very important to be able to look at. And so follow me to 1 Samuel, the 23rd chapter. I'm going to be covering from 14 down to 29. And I'm going to read through them. And it has some words in there that I have looked up. And prayerfully, God allowed me to pronounce them properly. But it's like I said, follow with me in this because it has a deep meaning in it. And it's a meaning that you and I, especially in today's time, we have to be able to receive this and walk in it because it's only going to benefit us if we get the message out of it. So 1 Samuel, the 23rd chapter, verses 14 through 29, and it goes as follows. And David stayed in the strongholds in the wilderness and remained in the mountains of the wilderness of Ziph. Saul sought him every day, but God did not deliver him into his hand. So David saw, apologize, my phone is acting up real bad. So David saw that Saul had come out to seek his life. And David was in the wilderness of Ziph, in a forest. Then Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David in the woods and strengthened his hand in God. And he said to him, "Do not fear, for the hand of Saul my father shall not find you. You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. Even my father Saul knows that." So the two of them made a covenant before the Lord. And David stayed in the woods, and Jonathan went to his own house. Then the Ziphites came up to Saul in Gibeah, saying, "Is David not hiding with us in the strongholds in the woods, in the hill of Hetaliah, which is in the south of Jeshimon? For now, therefore, king, come down according to the desire of your soul, and come down to our part, shall be delivered into him into the king's hand." And Saul said, "Blessed are you of the Lord, for you have compassion on me. Please go and find out for sure, and see the place where his hideout is, and who have seen him there? For I am told he is very crafty. Verse 23. See therefore and take knowledge of all the lurking places where he hides, and come back to me with certainty, and I will go with you. And it shall be, if he is in the land, that I will search for him but throughout all the clans of Judah. 24. So they arose and went to Ziph So they arose and went to Ziph before Saul. But David and his men were in the wilderness of Moin, and in the plain of the south of Jeshimon. When Saul and his men went to seek him, they told David. Therefore he went down to the rock. And stayed in the wilderness of Maon. And when Saul heard that, he pursued David in the wilderness of Maon. Then Saul went on one side of the mountain, and David and his men on the other side of the mountain. So David made haste to get away from Saul, for Saul and his men were encircling David and his men to take them. 27. But a messenger came to Saul, saying, Hurry, and come, for the Philistines have invaded the land. 28. Therefore Saul returned from pursuing David, and went against the Philistines. So they called the place the Rock of Escape. Then David went up from there, and dwelt in a strongholds in Gediah. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you, God, for this moment. Father, I ask you, Father, to use me, God. Lord, anything that hasn't been prepared, I ask you to prepare it. Anything that has not been done, Father, I'm asking you to go ahead and I apologize again, John. Let's go back into prayer. Heavenly Father, I thank you, God, once more for all that you're doing. Father, I thank you, God, because I already know. I feel the attack. I know what the enemy is trying to do, but it shall not work. So, Father, right now, I declare that this word will come out. It will come out with clarity. Satan, I bind you in the name of Jesus. You have no authority. And, Father, I thank you for your grace, your mercy, and your favor. For it is in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. I want you to get this message right here. And it's really weird to me right about now, because right now, I don't know if you've noticed it, but I am truly under attack, spiritual attack right about now. So you all pray for me as I go through with this message. All right, David in the wilderness of strongholds. Now listen here. If you look at the beginning at verse 14, when it's talking about, it said David stayed in the strongholds in the wilderness and remained in the mountains of the wilderness of Ziph. Now, when you hear strongholds, of course, that's something that the enemy is using to try to hold you back, or something that you maybe have is something that maybe the enemy has tried to put you in your mind that maybe you can't do a certain thing. But either way, you look at anytime you see strongholds, you'll see where the enemy is fighting someone. So when you look at right here, and it says, David stayed in the strongholds in the wilderness and remained in the mountains of the wilderness of Ziph. What's happening is Saul is after David to kill him. And what you're going to see, as if you was able to kind of follow along when I read, what you're going to see is that even though Saul is coming at David with everything that he has men that has followed along with him to try to kill David. And if you follow with me, you'll see down where it says that Jonathan, which is Saul's son, and this is why you can't really get so frustrated when the enemy comes against you. Because what had happened, again, you got to look at it, is that Saul is coming against David to try to kill him, which is basically being used by the enemy. He's basically being used by Satan to try to destroy the future of David. And the reasoning being, if you follow down in verse 18, it says, I think it's verse 18. But anyway, if you follow down, you will see where Jonathan, which is Saul's son, is actually helping David. And it says that David knew and Saul knew, but guess what? Jonathan knew that David would be king next. So even though so much was coming at David, It had already been promised to him. For one, in order for him to be king next, that must mean that David will escape the hands of Saul. Follow with me. So and this thing had already been promised. And also, like I said before, Saul knew that David was supposed to be king next. So what he's trying to do is kill him off. Which, listen, I want you to get just understanding out of this. That even though the enemy is coming at you and all seem like all hell is breaking loose, God has a purpose for it all. Just like with David, how David was hiding in the strongholds. Now, if David had trusted in God, he would not have been hiding under the strongholds. He wouldn't have been hiding in the desert and all of that other stuff. But now David is human, and I understand that you and I go through situations where we know what God has said, just like David knew what God had said. But what had happened, David had gotten his emotions and he got fearful. So now he's running from from Saul. Now, if you caught this, as I said, Saul knew that God had appointed David to be king next. Saul's son, Jonathan. Now, you wouldn't think about father and son being on two different planes or two different wavelengths. But this is what had happened, and this is why you and I cannot get so frustrated. Because God had appointed for Saul's son, Jonathan, and David to be good friends. And who would have ever thought that the enemy that was pursuing David, that God would choose his son to protect him? He chose Jonathan to protect David. So when you and I are going through hardcore obstacles, and it looks like, man, everybody's against you, don't be surprised who God will pull from whom you thought was on the opposing side to pull right beside you to support you. Because once again, it goes to show us that the devil will never outsmart God. The devil can never outrun and overtake us, because God has already promised us the victory, just like David was promised to be king. And it did not matter that Saul had so many men looking for David. And as you see, at one point down in verse 19, Saul had actually came back down looking, because David was like in the mountains or something. So it says, then Ziphites came to Saul at Gibeah, saying, is David not hiding with us in the strongholds in the woods, in the hill of Hachaliah, which is of the south of Jeshimon? 20, check this. Now therefore, O king, which they are now talking to Saul. And this is once again, you got to check this. It says, now therefore, O king, come down according to all the desire of your soul to come down, and our part shall be to deliver him into the king's hands. Now here, the Ziphites have gone to Saul and said, hey, you looking for looking for David, right? Don't worry about it, King Saul. What we're going to do for you, King Saul, we're going to go find Saul. Now let's look at this. We're going to go find David. And it says, come down, our part shall be to deliver him unto the king's hand. So now it looks like the Ziphites is going to look out for King Saul to go find David and tell David, and to get David to come with him. Either way, they're going to present David to Saul. This is what it looks like, right? Well, now, if you follow over with me, because this is what Saul says. Hey, he's like saying thank you. And be careful now when you go to pursue David, because in the end of 22, they says, for I am told he's very crafty. So now 23 says, see therefore, take knowledge of the lurking places where he hides, and come back to me with certainty, and I will go with you. And it shall be, if he is in the land, that I will search for him throughout all the clans of Judah. So now here's Saul, King Saul, saying, okay, Ziphites, I really appreciate it. Yeah, be careful now, because I heard David's crafty. And y'all be careful. Let me know where he is. And me and my partners, me and my men, we going to go find him. I don't care if he anywhere in Judea, we going to find him. Follow this. It looks like the Ziphites. And you would have thought that King Saul's son, Jonathan, you would have thought that Jonathan would have been against David, right? You would have thought, according to what just happened with King Saul, that the Ziphites would have been against King David. But no, look at here. It says, so they arose and went to Ziph before Saul. They went ahead of Saul. Because according to what Saul thinks, they're going to do him a favor. But David and his men were in the wilderness of Moab, in the plain of the south of Jeshimon. This is 24. And then 25. When Saul and his men went to seek him, they told David. Did you catch that? 25. When Saul and his men went to seek him, they told David. Therefore, he went back down to the rock and stayed in the wilderness of Moab. So now, Saul thinking, man, I got everybody against my side. I'm tired of looking at that. I'm going to find him now, and I'm going to behead him. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to kill him off to make sure that he doesn't become king next. I'm sick and tired of it. Not understanding that his son, God has appointed his son Jonathan to take care of him, to minister to him, because if you go back up, it says that Jonathan went to minister to him and to strengthen his hand. That's what the word of God says. So God has used Saul's son Jonathan to minister and strengthen David because David was running in fear. Jonathan brought the word back to David to say, hey man, remember you're supposed to be king next. Daddy can't hurt you. King Saul cannot hurt you. All right, cool. Now, the Ziphites, they said they're going to go find where they're going to find where David is, and we're going to come back and tear you, King Saul, so you and your men can come kill him. But now what happened is when King Saul came, him and his men, the Ziphites told David, hey, they're on the way. Again, watch this. I said again. When King Saul and his men came to go find David, the Ziphites let David know they were on the way, so now David could go hide somewhere else. Why is all of this is important? Because this goes to show us once again that I don't care how many enemies come at us, God always has a way of speaking to us to get us out the way or to block the enemy. We should not. And I know this is a process that you and I are now, like I said before, we were taught growing up how to operate like the world. Now God is teaching us how to operate in the spirit, how to shut the fear and the soulish realm off. The soulish realm being the fear that came upon David, the fear that comes upon us, the fear that, God, you ain't going to hear me, the fear that I'm going to lose my job and now my family's going to be living on the street and because I refuse to take a vaccine. The fear that I'll never be good enough and I'll never be married or nobody's ever going. All that stuff that the enemy uses to make you fear, God has already let us know in multiple situations that you and I should not be operating in the soulish realm. And when we operate in the soulish realm, that's how the devil gets in to play with our emotions and have us up, down, sideways, start crazy, ready to pull our hair out and quit. All right. So now God again sent Jonathan to strengthen David to let him know, wait a minute, God's going to take care of you. Get back in order. Get your mind right. God got you. Now, when the Ziphites went according to what they had told Saul, we're going to look out for you. We're going to give up. We're going to tell you where David is. Well, God once again used them. And when King Saul came to look for David, they told him where they told David, hey man, he on the way. You need to roll. That's God taking care of David, but just like he took care of David, he'll take care of us. God's going to always, if we stay connected, God is going to always get us out of the way or give us the strength to overcome the obstacle. Remember, he said he always give us a way out. God is going to always do that. That's his word. He does not lie. It does not matter what year, what century, or who the key players are. God is going to make sure, because that is his word, he does not lie. His children will be taken care of. So here, it talks about, and let's go a little further. So when Saul and his men went to seek David, they told David, therefore he went down to the rock, this is David, and stayed in the wilderness of Moab. And when Saul heard that, Now, so now hear this. Now, the Ziphites told David, man, you need to get out of here. So David ran to Moab and hid in the rocks of Moab. So now, some snitch, got to call it like this, a snitch. Because they said, when Saul and his men went to seek him, they told David. So that's when David left. This is out of 25 I'm reading. Therefore, he went down to the rock and stayed in the wilderness of Moab. And when Saul heard that, how did Saul hear it? A snitch. Somebody told on David. So it says, and when Saul heard that, he pursued David in the wilderness of Moab. So now you would think, man, the Ziphites looked out for David. David barely got away. Saul and his men was on the way. Somebody then went and told Saul. And now Saul is going to follow him to the wilderness of Moab. Man, David, you would think, man, hey, God got me out of this obstacle, but here they come again. It seems like it's a bigger crew. Man, and I got a link in my people. Somebody telling on me. But follow along what happens. Then Saul went on one side of the mountain, and David and his men on the other side of the mountain. That's 26. So now it looks like Saul, because Saul is on one side of the mountain, David's on the other side. It looks like Saul is about to overtake David, right? Because they really on the same mountain, they just on one side. One on one side, one on the other side. So when it's starting to get crazy for you and I, and it looks like the enemy is closing in, and it looks like, man, this might be, as they say, all she wrote right here. This might gonna get ugly. Look what happens. Look what happens. So David made haste to get away from Saul, for Saul and his men were encircling David and his men to take them. So now David making haste, meaning he's trying to hurry and get out of Dodge. He's trying to hurry and run, right? So this is what's happening now. David is like, man, I got to get out of here. Saul closing in. Watch this. 27. But a messenger came to Saul saying, come, for the Philistines have invaded. For the Philistines have come and invaded the land. So now, check this out. When it looks like David, y'all, I'm sorry about what's happening here. It's almost becoming comical. It's almost, not there yet, but it's almost becoming comical. So what it looks like, that when Saul and his men were coming up and they were about to overtake David, a messenger comes to Saul that the Philistines is now overtaking their land. Now watch how God protected David in this situation. So now what happens when the message gets to Saul that the Philistines, remember they were some big bad boys, according to scripture. It looks like they're now overtaking Saul's land. So what does that happen for David? Where the enemy was closing in on David, they now get a message. Saul gets a message that, wait a minute, the Philistines is coming to overtake your land. David's right here. Saul been after David for all this time. But now Saul is like, they doing what? Oh man, I got to go. Did you catch that? Because what's happening is God allowed the enemy to come almost right up on David. And as soon as you would have thought that David was about to be overtaken, God sent a ram in the bush. God made Saul deviate. And see, this is what's going to happen. This is what always happens with us when we trust God. The enemy is looking, you almost staring the enemy right face to face. And it looks like things is not going to go out for your good. But what God will do, he will either find a way to distract the enemy, but either way, you can always bet you will not lose. Even if a situation and it's like, man, this is not what I wanted to happen. I had a feeling that was going to happen. God is going to work it out for our good. So now in this situation where David was being pursued, and Saul got that close to him, and then God sent a messenger to Saul to tell him, wait a minute, King Saul, he's the king of the land. He has to take care of his land. The Philistines, the big bad boys, is coming into your land and now trying to invade it to take over. Saul now has to leave David alone and run and go pursue to defend his land. God called off the dogs on David to send him somewhere else. Listen to this word. I know you and I are going through obstacles. I know the enemy is fighting us on hand by hand and and it seems like sometimes wherever we step, there's a battle. There's a battle. There's a battle. But remember I said at the beginning, God allows these things to happen just so you and I can see. If we allow God to do what he does, if we allow God and we really trust God and let God be in the driver's seat, God has a way of giving us the victory, because it's not us. It's not our name that's so important. What's important is that we have Jesus' blood. We are part of the body of Christ. So now, God, what parent wouldn't take care of his son or his children? You and I have been stamped with the blood of Jesus. Do you really, let's think about it. Do you really think God is going to allow the enemy to overtake us? Being that we are representing him, we have his stamp. It doesn't happen. And when it seems like, man, you lost in this area, it's only because God wants to give us greater. The enemy never wins. I don't care where you look at. He never wins. He never wins. He never will win. Matter of fact, he gets destroyed at the end. He never wins. So you and I, as children of God, have to be encouraged to know that guess what? God got my back. He got me. He's going to do whatever is necessary for me to get strengthened, my tools to get sharpened. Because he don't want me to stay a babe, but he also would do whatever is necessary to protect us. He would do what's necessary to keep the enemy from overtaking us. So you and I should be able to now walk in confidence. No matter what you're seeing on your left, everything goes back to Psalm 91. 10,000 fall at that right hand, 1,000 fall at the left, but if none should come near our dwelling, we would only see the reward that goes out to the wicked. It does not matter what's coming towards us, what's happening around us. God promised he will protect us. And even when things looks like you have lost, God got a better victory in store. Even when it comes to us leaving this world. Again, I've been teaching on this for quite some time. If God calls us home, that's supposed to be a joyous occasion because we're going home. So even if the enemy thinks, or even if God allows our life to be taken, understand you didn't do nothing but bless me the best. Guess what? You really didn't take nothing from me. I knew when I realized I had a heartbeat that I was going. I'm going at some point. But all you really did was just bless me the more. But oftentimes, unless it's time for us to go home, God gives us the victory every single time. Don't believe me? Look in your life. Even what happened to you when you was a young child, it made you grow into the person that you are now so that you can now help somebody else. But there's sternness about you. There's things about you that even if it had not happened that way, you would have been a pushover. If it had not happened that way, God was with you even when it happened. But if it hadn't happened that way, you wouldn't be able to sustain and walk through the valley of the shadow, not even death, but the shadow of death, like we do every day. God used those obstacles to strengthen us up. As my wife like to say, put your big girl panties on. God used all those obstacles to make us put on a bigger set of boxers, a bigger set of, God, you got this, so that now we can walk into a situation where everybody else is folding and you and I are still standing saying, man, God got me. God got me. It don't even matter what the rest of the family doing. God got me. It don't even matter what your church family doing. God got me. Be it according to your faith. It don't even matter what the rest of your household is doing sometimes. God got me. You got to understand, God got us. And so, just like David, and we know the story that David ended up becoming King David. We know that. Why? Because God had him. But guess what? Imagine being king and never went through anything. Never knew that God can protect you. Imagine being an adult and you're trying to teach your kids that God will protect you, but you've never experienced it yourself. Imagine being an aunt, grandmother, grandfather, daddy, ain't never been through nothing. But yet and still, you trying to push down your children's throat, your grandchildren's throat. Man, God is a reward of those who seek him. But see, you and I now got personal testimonies of how we've gone through, as they say, been there and done that, and God brought us out. And so I'm encouraging you that on tonight, on this morning, remember, God got us. God got us. Just like he had David, just like he got you. Just like he had you back then, he got you now, and he going to have you in the future. Walk and do your very best as you pursue God, that you trust him more. Continue to put this word in. Because as you look around, everything the world offers you is a lack of faith. The numbers is gone. Oh man, everybody's dying that has this stuff. Walk in fear. That's what the word presents. I'm going to lose my job. That's what the word presents. But God presents faith. God presents actions. God produces victory. What side you want to be on? I'd much rather walk in peace, walk in faith, and enjoy my day than to be sitting back crying for 24 hours about some suppose it happened. What if it happened? You're not going to destroy my day looking in a fantasy land. Suppose, what if? I got more important things to do. So I'm telling you on today, just an encouragement. God got us just like he had David, just like he got you, just like he got every one of us. God got us. Walk in victory. Know and trust God. In all that you do, put God first and allow him to drive. Allow him to drive that thing. And when you start feeling like, I don't know, get in your word. Get in your word and see the examples of where God has brought them through. Then go into prayer and ask God to reveal things to you on how God's going to bring you through. Or give you the peace while you walk into whatever your situation is. Either way, as children of God, warriors on a mission, let's walk in peace. It is a daily fight that the enemy uses to try to steal our peace and try to steal our joy.